Every great story ever told begins with a decision, a moment where someone looked at what was comfortable, familiar, and easy, and chose something else, something uncertain, something filled with risk. And yet, something so deeply aligned with their purpose that they couldn't say no. If you think about your own life, the moments that changed you, the moments that defined you, they didn't come from playing it safe. They didn't come from sitting in the shadows waiting for the world to hand you a breakthrough. They came from stepping into discomfort, from trying even when you were terrified, from putting something on the line. That is the essence of risk, and without it, there is no story. Every time we talk about courage, about grit, about determination, what we're really talking about is the willingness to risk failing, to risk being misunderstood, to risk losing, because only when we are willing to risk can we grow. Only when we risk do we start to discover what we're truly made of. The person who never risks anything lives a flat life, a life with no depth, no texture, no narrative. They live in black and white, never tasting the color that risk brings. We weren't built for safety. We were built for impact, and impact requires risk. People often think that success comes from strategy, from careful planning, from executing the perfect sequence of steps. And sure, those things matter, but behind every plan is a decision that defies logic, a leap that makes no sense on paper, a moment where heart overrides reason. That's risk, and that's the real beginning of any story worth telling. Think of every innovator, every leader, every person who's ever made a dent in the world. Their story begins where comfort ends. They took a chance, and that chance became the seed of something extraordinary. The truth is, you cannot inspire anyone by being comfortable. You cannot move hearts, you cannot spark revolutions, and you cannot change lives by playing it safe. People are drawn to those who dare. We admire those who stand at the edge and jump, not because they're fearless, but because they jumped anyway. Risk is not the absence of fear, it's action in the presence of it, and that is the foundation of every meaningful story ever lived. You may be waiting for the perfect time, waiting until you're ready, waiting until the fear goes away, but that moment never comes. Readiness is a myth. Certainty is a lie. If you wait for perfect, you'll wait forever. The people who build legacies, the people who create stories worth retelling, are the ones who move before they're ready, who feel the fear and act anyway. That is the moment where life begins to expand. That is the moment when something inside you wakes up and says, "This is what I was made for." So ask yourself, what are you risking? What are you putting on the line? If the answer is nothing, then your story hasn't begun yet. If you want to write a narrative that's remembered, a life that echoes long after you're gone, you have to risk something. You have to bet on yourself when no one else will. You have to step into the dark with nothing but faith and purpose guiding you. That's where your story lives. That's where what separates those who rise from those who remain stagnant is not talent, not intelligence, not connections. It's the willingness to risk something for something greater. It's the choice to say, "I will not stay here. I will move even if it costs me." It's the understanding that nothing meaningful was ever built in the comfort zone. The most impactful people you've heard of, the ones who have inspired you, challenged you, changed your thinking, are all risk takers. Not reckless gamblers, but intentional risk takers. People who knew that the reward of growth, progress, and purpose was worth the uncertainty. We glorify success stories, but forget they are built on chapters of uncertainty, self-doubt, and near collapse. Every successful entrepreneur risked rejection and failure before they built something that mattered. Every revolutionary risked ridicule and isolation before they led change. Every artist risked being misunderstood before they touched hearts. The point is simple. Without the risk, the story loses its power. Without the climb, the summit means nothing. Without the fall, the rise has no beauty. You cannot inspire people with a life that avoids danger. People are drawn to those who dare to live boldly, because something deep within all of us wants to believe we're capable of that too. Too often, we are trained to seek stability. We're taught to follow the rules, take the safe path, stay in line. But that path rarely leads to greatness. Safe choices make small lives. Risky choices, however, shape stories that last. You will be tempted to stay silent when you should speak up. You will be tempted to stay in place when you should step forward. But each time you give in to comfort, you write another forgettable page in your story, and each time you act with courage, even when no one is watching, even when you're not sure how it will end, you begin to craft a life that people will talk about long after you're gone. People often ask, "What if I fail?" But the real question is, what if you don't even try? What if your best ideas die with you? What if the greatest version of yourself never sees the light because you were afraid to take that one risk? Playing it safe is a bigger danger than taking a leap, because failure, at least, gives you data. Failure gives you growth. Failure gives you a lesson, but avoiding risk gives you nothing. It leaves you standing still while the world moves on without you. You were not born to be still. You were born to move, to create, to inspire, and none of that happens unless you're willing to step beyond what is easy. The irony is, we think risk is about losing, but in truth, risk is about gaining. Gaining insight, gaining strength, gaining resilience. It's about collecting experiences that shape your character. You'll never know how strong you are until you're tested, and you'll never be tested unless you risk something. Risk reveals who you are. It forces you to confront what you believe in, what you value, and what you're willing to fight for. It clarifies your mission. It sharpens your focus. It strips away everything false and leaves only what is real. Most people drift through life as spectators. They sit in the stands commenting on those who dare to play. But life isn't meant to be observed. It's meant to be lived, and living means risking. You may be bruised, you may stumble, you may even fall, but you will live fully. And when you live fully, your story becomes one that others remember. Your life becomes a message, a beacon for others trying to find the courage to step forward themselves. Because when one person takes a risk, they unconsciously give others permission to do the same. That's how leaders are made. That's how movements begin. That's how the world changes. So don't avoid the hard path. Walk it with purpose. Don't fear the unknown. Embrace it as your next chapter. Don't run from risk. Run toward it with open arms. Because that's where life meets meaning. That's where stories are born. You are not here to be average. You are not here to be safe. You are here to make your mark. And that requires stepping into the arena, not knowing what will happen, but trusting that the story that unfolds will be worth it. Greatness waits. In the end, the question isn't whether you played it safe. The question is whether you lived a life worth telling. When your time is up, no one will remember how careful you were. They won't admire the way you stayed in your lane or clung to the familiar. They'll remember the moments you stepped out, the chances you took, the bold decisions you made when it mattered most. Your story will be remembered in the risks you took to become who you were meant to be. Because only in risking do we truly reveal our potential. Only in risking do we strip away the expectations of others and embrace the life we were uniquely born to live. Your legacy will not be built on comfort. It will be built on courage, on the quiet moments when you chose to move forward despite doubt, on the loud moments when you said what needed to be said, on the broken moments when you got back up and kept going. These are the pages of a powerful life. These are the parts of your story that will echo, but they only exist if you're willing to risk. If you're willing to stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "What if I fly?" Because that question, "What if I fly?" is the one that changes everything. That question is the beginning of a legacy. That question opens the door to a life of meaning. So go ahead, write a story worth telling, not with caution, but with conviction, not with fear, but with faith. Take the leap, trust the fall, learn from the struggle, rise from the failure, inspire with your resilience, shock them with your growth. Prove, not to the world, but to yourself, that the greatest stories are never born in safety. They are born in the wild, unpredictable places where people dare to chase something bigger than themselves. And when people ask you one day, "How did you do it?" don't just give them the outcome. Tell them the whole story. Tell them about the nights you doubted yourself. Tell them about the people who told you it was impossible. Tell them about the fear, the tears, the silence, and the storm. And then tell them how you risked it all anyway. How you stepped forward anyway, because that's the part that matters. That's the part they'll remember. That's the part that inspires. No risk, no story. It's that simple, and it's that powerful.